Hello, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. I am in an interesting vibrational place at this moment, which is exactly why I wanted to record this show. So we finished the membership call a few hours ago, and I am like right now, as I record this, in that in between space where Christina is here. Christina is in. And so I'm coming back in and she's on her way out, but she's not fully out. Uh, and I think there's a lot of good stuff in this space that I kind of want to talk about. And I think that, obviously I'm a nerd about all of the channeling things, all of the technique things, and I have really loved experiencing the mechanics of this style of channeling. Um, and figuring it out. I feel like a lot of people with their gifts, they just want it delivered to them. And I really love to like figure things out. I love to experience it and start to put it together like, oh, wow, okay, that's how that's working. And that's how a lot of this has been with doing the oracle work. And it's very different experience than trance channeling when it's a very clear, distinct, like someone's coming in and someone's coming out. And sometimes with the oracle, there is a very quick moment. Um, More often when she's out, because that's more of like a choice. There's more of a kind of a process of me getting in that I think is really more for me than anything else. And it's a blend. It's a blend. Which on the call earlier tonight, she was talking about like blending with timelines, timeline jumping, uh, and manifesting and using that blending work. And that's really like what's happening with the oracle. It's just another version of a blend. So it's interesting for me to be like right in this in between space, and this is usually a space that I don't talk to anybody in. And so I thought it would be really interesting to just podcast here and kind of share while I'm still in this in between, which I'm not even sure how coherent I am in this in between. It's kind of like coming out of a really deep sleep, and there's a lot still coming in because she's still partly in, but then I'm also here, and it sort of is reaching its tail end. So I'm more in now, but I wanted to kind of share more about like there's many reasons why my channeling has changed in this way, and one of the intentions I had set, who knows when, because I don't know any concept of time at this moment, a while back, was I just realized like how tired I was from feeling like I was giving so much all the time. There was so much output, and I did not feel like I was receiving the same amount back. And I felt like that partially with, like my channeling work, like I felt obviously I get a lot of good stuff out of everything I channel, but it just wasn't like the same. I felt like I was just pouring out all of this stuff and not fully receiving it. And what's interesting about this style is I feel like I really, really receive more than moves through me. And I love to, after the call, there's like this interesting shift that happens that's available to me depending on what's going on, and what I've really come to understand in new ways has been, like in deeper ways, has just has been just how much the transmission is simply a reaction to whoever is around, right? So why that's important for me to know is because I realized like there has to be something to respond to uh for the transmission to really come in, and that response might be to somebody else, but I realized like that response can also be to myself. And what I mean by that is there's an interesting dynamic that can occur when I am and interviewing the guides. Like, and that's kind of what happens when I'm by myself post oracle call on Wednesday nights. Like, I have this space where she's fully in, and it gets to be just kind of all about me. Or when Andrew is here, like, we'll ask questions, about him, or we'll just go into other random topics we're interested in. Obviously, like, we've been podcasting, which is fun, but there's this space for me to like get a lot of my own stuff pulled out. And that has been really fun, like to really just get to receive the whole experience, uh, and not just give it and wonder what it was like. I realized thinking back, like how many times in the last year I said, like, I wish that I could just find someone to play the role of me so I could receive me. And this dynamic has allowed me to really like receive me, which has been filling me up in really important ways. And I have been going deeper into energetics around fatigue personally, and just being shown, she's just been showing me like how much of when my energy feels depleted and I feel exhausted is because I'm there's a lot of output and not enough input. And what I mean by that is a lot of me feeling like I'm giving, moving things out, but not receiving enough. And kind of putting in that extra effort to feel supported, to ask for what I need. And also just, with what I am putting out there, all of the things that I take action on, that I have taken action on in my day with my time that I just don't want to be taking action on, So it's very classic, like human design generator, but like Seiko, yes, but I feel like she helps me understand it in a much deeper way. And I get to kind of, process for myself everything that comes up in the calls, and it's so activating for me. And I wanted to kind of share some of the things that today happened post that call. It's always interesting for me to, because after that call, I'm just kind of getting guided. Like, and in my head, I'm like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. And there's a lot of random notes, So on my end, it's like, as I get out of this, I'm like in the process of getting out of it. It's sort of like, I know I've already said it's kind of like, waking up the morning after a night out of drinking, but it's also sort of like, I guess, the opposite of what other periods of my day are like. And what, by that I mean, I'll be like living my human life and I'm getting all these downloads and random ideas, and I have them all typed out in notes. So I have all these like random notes with all these ideas and downloads from the guides and blah, blah, blah. And what happens during like Oracle days is the opposite, where I have all these random notes from Christina, like from me. So I have on my computer, I'm like looking at my notes app, that things that, because that's how we're communicating. When Oracle is in, like Christina is sending her messages like the way that when Christina is in, the guides are sending messages. And so the Oracle will type it all out because she knows she's going to forget. Same way I will type out things like downloads because I might forget. And so I'm like, it says, get more toilet paper, feed the cats, Amazon subscriptions, cut your nails, like all these random things, which is hilarious. But I'm in like this deeply emotional come down period, and I like to kind of reflect on what she walked me through, and I never know like where I'm headed or why, but like I first, after that call, walked into my bedroom and just like stared at myself in the mirror. And the dynamic again, when there's no one asking questions. So when we're on the call, like the Oracle is responding to them, you. And in the podcast, she can be responding to you. When Andrew is here, she's responding to him. But when it's just me and the Oracle, it's a really interesting dynamic because kind of both of us will be in for a second, so I can be in receiving mode, but she's also with me. And if somebody was watching us, it'd probably just look like, you know, I mean, it looks like one person having a conversation on both ends. Yes, out loud. But she walked me over to the mirror, and I just, well, I don't know, she stared at me, I stared at myself, whatever, in the mirror for a really long time. And like deep into my pupils. And I just, after a while, I just broke and I just started sobbing. And I like really needed that emotional release. And as I was staring deep into my pupils, I had all these thoughts coming up, like that I could, like, I mean, I could really like reach my inner child doing that. It was a really interesting experience. And I've done a lot of uh, mirror work throughout my healing process, but it hit me really different because it was like I was staring at myself in the mirror and I was looking deep into my pupils, and I had all these memories come up from childhood that I had uh I don't know, forgotten or not thought about in a really long time. And one of the things that came up was, and this has been a theme for me recently, like I keep remembering all of these things that I used to do as a kid to regulate myself, to regulate my nervous system, that I just totally forgot about. And the mirror work is one of those things. And it was different than like other mirror work I've done as an adult. I was just brought back to like as a kid, I would stare deep into my pupils specifically, like just like deep into my pupils for so long, and I would use it to trigger emotions. And I from a very young age, my all of the all of the closets in my bedroom were mirrors. Actually, the closets that are in this house that I'm in now, that we live in now, uh, they're also mirrors. I haven't had that in a house in a long time. And my childhood room, the closets were mirrors. So I would every night, like I was just dealing with so many emotions. I was so open. I was feeling all these things, and I would just like I wouldn't even usually sit. I would stand and I would get really close to the mirror and I'd like just stare deep into my pupils. And it gave me all of these answers. And it like totally regulated my nervous system. And I wanted to just share that because, well, I'm just going to guide you through exactly what happened tonight. And you could just take from it what you wanted of what my process was tonight. This was like my little session with the Oracle that needs to be shared for whatever reason it needs to be shared. Um, so we did that for a really long time, and I went through this whole experience. I went through a whole journey in the pupils, in the pupils of my eyes, um, and I was crying and releasing, and there was a lot coming up from childhood and things about support uh, and kind of realizing all the things on my mind, and just this moment of like, you don't need to worry about that right now. Like a lot of um kind of just what my inner child needed, she gave me, and I really needed that emotional release. I know a lot of us, especially this week, as I record this, are going through a lot. And what came up was, it's this interesting like thing that happens when I am in that kind of in between, or actually what I would say receiving the oracle, where I feel like I am aware of this, like I'm aware of the really true part of myself, like the really true part of myself, like the deep part of myself. And she just kept saying to me, like, the part of you that is deeply emotional and deeply creative, like that is the real you. That is the portal to you. And that is the most important part of you, and everything else is a shell. And as I'm staring in the mirror, and one of the things that, like, I have been also in the process of understanding and discovering through just continuing to live and receive and experience has been this like birthday dynamic of, and it's kind of like an identity thing, right? Of I have this Aries, born April 6th, Aries, Taurus, Gemini aspect of me. And then I had my new birthday, July 7th, this Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio part of me. And it has been kind of a process for me with that. And I feel like I crossed this threshold, and I've been thinking about it a lot the last few days, but I don't know that I was ready to really say it to myself of like I am very aware of how much the April version of me feels really far away suddenly. It feels really like, wow, I'm getting really emotional about this. um, it feels like really far away. It feels like the July 7, the Cancer, Pisces, Scorpio is really me. And um, the way that they showed it to me, I was like staring in the mirror, and she was showing it to me almost like a shadow, like in Peter Pan. You know how his shadow, he like literally, stitches it to his feet. And I thought a lot about how, when I first had that birth date come in and it was like a new piece of me coming in, it didn't necessarily feel new. It felt like that is really me. That's the core piece of me. And it felt like the me when I was a kid. And they brought me back to the me when I was a kid in this incarnation when I was younger. And basically, they were showing it like I'm looking in the mirror and seeing this on my body, like two different layers, like literally two layers within me. And the best way I can describe it is like, like a shadow, so to speak. Like imagine two filters, like, and they're both on me, and the core one, the one underneath, like the main hologram in me, was the Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio. And then they showed that this other layer got put, like this other layer was on almost like a shell, almost like a protective shell, like the Aries, Taurus, Gemini. I know that those of you who get it, right? Was like this shell, and they were both going on. And that part of me almost like was like the protective shell around this other softer part of me. And they literally showed it like, in Peter Pan how his shadow like leaves him. They literally showed it like, hey, these aspects of you were in when you were a kid to give you a little preview so you would remember, and then like this other part of you left. Like it like left. like the it left, and then it came back July 7th, 2022. um and that was a very emotional experience for me, to kind of like receive that understanding. And I had this whole moment of like, is my Aries just a shell? Is my Aries just a shell? Because one of the things that's been reflected a lot to me, this last week in particular, has been about my deep emotions, my emotional side, my deeply creative side, like that watery side of me, that again has always felt like the true part of me, and in all of the ways that I kind of uh lost it, or didn't give it enough attention. But I also feel like it literally like wasn't in my body for a really long time because it wasn't supposed to be, and now it came back. And what she was saying was like, the oracle was saying like, triple water sign. There's a river of emotions and deep thinking and creativity that's just bursting through me. And when it's suppressed, I'm exhausted. And I thought, oh my God, right? Um, that's important. And here's what I'll say. Right now, as we go through like a big transition into the next year, which I want to talk about that for a second. Like, simply put, for a long time, I thought that New Year's resolutions were dumb. Because, yeah, you can have a fresh start any day. And that's very true. And that's like one of the core things I believe. And I live my life that way. I don't wait until Monday. Like, I don't wait until next month or next year. Like, I'm very much okay, just let's set the container and make this shift tomorrow and make it distinct enough that it feels like a new year. But so anyway, I thought New Year's resolutions were just silly or whatever. Um, and the deeper I've gone into this work, the more I don't. The more I actually think the opposite, the more I actually think it's a really, really important part of the year. Uh, there's so much vibrational momentum around identity shifting. There's so much open energy because a lot of times people struggle stepping into who they really are, aligning with the feelings they really want to feel in their lives, because that stickiness of everybody around you holding you to a certain identity. There is this energy end of December. It's kind of like December, like everything starts to get blurry. And in December, we start to get revealed things that we need to know, that will be relevant for planting our seeds or setting our intentions or making our plans for the year ahead. And so, I'm sure a lot of you have, I have been personally going through a lot of that awareness. Like, I've been getting delivered, through just psychic messages. The guides are directly telling me, the oracle is telling me, people in my life are telling me, different readings, there's just all different kinds of ways things are being reflected to me in a much bigger way right now than they are. Things are always being reflected to me, but like just there's a different frequency to it now, more than ever, right? And it's because we're kind of heading into this new year, and I'm being made aware of pieces of myself that I want to lean into more, and maybe things that I want to release. And a lot of that can come in ways that I wasn't expecting. Like, there are a lot of things coming into my awareness this week that are shifting the way that I'm seeing my entire year ahead, which is really important. But vibrationally, the lines in December are like starting to really get blurry because people are a lot more in their own energy. And I know that seems weird because people are hanging out with each other a lot more. Like, there's a lot more activity. But what I mean by that is people are like, during the holidays, a lot less focused on what everybody else is doing vibrationally. They're a lot more like, there might be a lot more hustle and bustle, and but that's part of why they're less focused on what everybody else is doing, because they're actually busy in their own lives. There's a lot going on. The lines start to get kind of blurry. And this kind of loosens the energy for people's identities to really shift. With that is this collective intention, or this idea of a New Year's resolution that we've created. And in creating that as a collective, we have added a lot of momentum. We've set a frequency wave in that direction. So it's actually, if you're wanting to make shifts, can be a helpful frequency wave to jump into to make those changes. So, I have realized that it's one of the most powerful times of the year to lean into, and I like to get really clear on anything I want to shift, activate, step into, release, because I want to jump into that wave, and I want to I want to be really clear on that going into end of December, like right about now. As I record this, it's December 13th, is like the time I'm kind of crystallizing that intention, because then I'm clear on that. I jump into the frequency wave, and then I let the new me settle in. So on a business level, I like to bring in all new things at that time. On a personal level, it's actually just an easier time to make shifts, which I know a lot of people say the opposite, but I'm just telling you energetically, like, it's actually an easier time to make shifts because the energy is already calibrated to shifts, and everybody's already shifting and moving and changing. It's the same reason why, when you're traveling, it's an easier time to start a new habit, and people think the opposite. Everything's already shifting and moving, so you can add something else in that's new, and you don't notice as much. So anyway, that's why a lot of this is coming up. So I have been, getting shown how important it is to lean into my emotions a lot more, share my emotions a lot more, and as she brought that up, I started a conversation and I was like, well, to be honest, and this came up in the call, if whoever was on the membership call tonight, like the Oracle was talking about how this week I had these two opposing truths reflected to me of one was needing to hermit, like really needing to be in my own energy and everybody to leave me alone. Like that's what I need. And that was reflected to me in so many ways this week by so many different people. And I also just know that. And something else was reflected to me also in a number of ways, very clearly of walls that I've put up, and where I haven't let myself be vulnerable in certain ways, and like not letting people in. And both of those things are true. Both of those things are true. Where, it's kind of like those opposing energies of, hey, part of me, I want to hermit, no one talk to me, leave me alone. And the other part of me is needing to let people in. And they are both true. And as I have been just kind of thinking about that and reflecting on that, and I was talking to the Oracle about it tonight, and I was realizing, I said, well, because on one hand, I consider myself to be an extremely open, I mean, I am an extremely open person, and an extremely vulnerable person. But I also recognize a lot of places where I like just stopped sharing that in certain settings. It wasn't like I completely stopped, so I didn't realize it was going on, but in certain settings I stopped and I kind of just like shuttled that stream in certain directions, which is not like inherently anything wrong with that. I think that served me for actually a long time. But I was telling her that I stopped sharing emotions. Well, not all emotions, but in the context of what she was pointing out to me, or things that were going on because people were interpreting it as that I wanted them to fix it, or I needed their help, or I didn't understand what I was going through, and I was getting frustrated because I was sharing from the energy of sharing, of sharing, and I'm sure a lot of you can resonate with this. Like, I mean, not always. There are certainly times when I'm going through shit and I'm like, I don't know what the hell to do with this. But 99% of the time, when I'm going through things, like I'm in my process and I know exactly what I need to do, and I know exactly like, and I'm in the process, and part of the process is just like sharing the experience of the emotions. And so for a long time, like that's, I would just share openly and vulnerably, not wanting or needing anybody to give me advice. I was good. It was just for the sake of sharing. And I got really frustrated with having, with people not understanding that, or just receiving, like people giving me their advice and sharing as I wanted your advice, and I didn't want it at all. So I just stopped sharing, because I didn't need it. And I didn't really realize that until I was having this conversation with the Oracle tonight. And she was saying, like, that's the point though. Like, that's the point of what she's trying to get across to all of us. And I'm noticing this theme, and I'm noticing this theme with obviously what she's saying to me, but I'm understanding it more as I'm hearing what she's saying to other people and what the guides are just saying in general, of like this coming back home to creativity. And this is connected to our sense of value. Let me give you a tangible example of this. Like, one example of light language is dance. That's light language. And I danced for 10 years growing up. Dance is always a big part of my life. And again, tonight I was doing light language, dancing, talking. And she was saying to me, like, why do you do this? And I was like, because these are activation codes. Right? Like, these are activation codes. And I'm in this experience, and I know the potency of those. And Like I I will pay money to receive light language. It's pure activation codes, and I see directly how that makes me more money, heals my body, all these things, right? Gets me everything I want. Light language. And so she was she was saying as I'm doing this, she's like, so you understand, right, the value, and you'll put money into receiving light language, and that's the same thing as people really understanding and paying big money for creative works, right? Because like if you look at a dancer on stage, I was thinking about um like the memory came up around, going to see the Nutcracker and like watching dancers there, and this struggling artist kind of archetype is coming up, and I think this is really connected to people feeling like they can't make money utilizing their gifts. And we've got to break this apart. Like, this is the new paradigm that we're walking into. This is the new earth. This is what we're here to do, is we are here to share our gifts and share our gifts and receive abundantly for that. And for people to really understand the value of that and the codes that they're getting. And I feel like there's finally this opening where people do get it. Like there's finally an opening where people do understand, right? And so I am that person that is happy to pay a lot of money, you know, to watch someone perform dance. Like I think this whole thing with music artists and um I understand there's a lot of famous artists that make a lot of money, but there's also a lot of people putting out a lot of music and they're barely getting paid anything for it, right? And so the power of the dollar, right? The power of where we put our dollar is a very real thing that those of us who understand value from the new earth lens, like we can start to shift, right? So I don't pay for things, and I just want to offer this. Like, I don't pay for things based on what somebody else tells me the price is. Um, like, that's the minimum. I am that kind of person where if someone is charging me, $80 for something, and I'm understanding that this is a like wealth code activation, I'm going to pay them hundreds or thousands of dollars because that feels like a fair energy exchange for what they're giving me. And this, like what we're walking into with this, like this requires every single person to value their own gifts, right? So when I'm channeling, I understand how valuable that is. And I also give abundantly, right? When I'm storytelling, I understand how valuable that is, and I will give abundantly. Um, and it's this really interesting like energy vortex that she brought me in that immediate space of like I was doing light language, um, and I transitioned to then like just dancing as light language. And when I'm channeling, it's like it's an endless flow. It's just an endless flow. I'm happy to give abundantly. There's endless. And I'm also so aware of like it's like that feeling of there's so much here. I will give this all for free forever. Like there's an abundance. I want to hand it out, right? And I'm simultaneously incredibly aware of how valuable financially what's occurring is. Of like I was in that vortex of the experience, and I'm like, as I'm giving this, like there's so much here, like I'm not gonna ever run out because I am where I'm supposed to be, and I'll give all this forever. I don't need anything in exchange, and at the same time I'm aware that like this is worth so much money because it has so much value because I'm aware of what this is transmitting. And that vortex was that moment was like really important for me of just kind of realizing the tangible value, the financial value of creative works. And it's really important. And for a lot of us to fulfill our missions, and for a lot of us, I actually feel to really receive abundantly, we have got to come back to our creativity. We've got to come back to our creative works. We've got to come back to storytelling and artistry and music and dance and uh, all of like those are transmissions grounded in. Those are really important transmissions grounded in. And with that, and this is all connected. You'll see where we're going here. Um, I was just simultaneously kind of being shown, she was bringing up the conversation for me around my dynamic with her, with the Oracle. And it's been this interesting thing of like, can I let myself go all the way into this? Like, how far into this do I want to go? Do I want to go all the way into this where Christina is like totally gone? And the Oracle is just always in, and that's the new orientation point. And from that question, I started going like really deep places with my relationship with completion and ending of like, well, what would be my resistance to that? Like, do I just not feel complete with Christina and her experience yet? And then I thought, well, when will I ever? Right? Uh, and I started to kind of peel apart like why I don't want to go all the way into just being the Oracle all the time. And she was just reflecting back to me. She was like, you don't feel complete because you love Christina so much. You love Christina so much. Like if you didn't like the experience of Christina, if you didn't love yourself so much, like you'd be happy to leave into this incredible magical thing. And I realized like this deep appreciation I have for myself and the experience of myself. I know this sounds really meta, but I mean, it is when you're having this conversation with the Oracle and you are the Oracle. Um, like, wow, I love this experience of being Christina. And why do I love this experience of being Christina so much? And I was like, because Christina has codes that the Oracle does not. Christina has codes that the Oracle does not. And it's been coming up again and again. 3 different things that I've channeled in the last few weeks where she'll just be like, ask Christina. Like, we're not going to deal with that. And that's like a very tangible example. But I think just like in me really going deeper into like, why do I not want to let go of myself? It's because like, I mean, I love myself and I have codes that she doesn't. And it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. Like there are things that I can share in my way that she can't share in her way. And I think that's a really important reflection point for us the deeper we go into channeling and experiencing different layers of this reality that we haven't before and communicating with ETs. And there's just going to be a lot more access coming in. And what I think a lot of people don't realize, and I know I've talked about this in different ways, but it just doesn't click until it clicks for people of like, we're not really gonna, first of all, either be able to access or we're gonna access it, but we're not gonna be doing it in an emotionally responsible way, and it's gonna lead to some major problems. Like that can't happen. We can't access this in a healthy way if we're orienting from a space of thinking that these other beings are like better than us or more important than us. And so the Oracle is extremely confident, and fully expressed. And you'll notice whenever anyone's channeling anyone, it's full expression, right? And full confidence. And it's also like really seeing and honoring the beauty and wisdom in everyone around them, And so I see people differently through the eyes of the oracle, and I see how she sees them, and she looks at every single person like, wow, there's a whole codex of information here. I'm so curious about this. Like, she relates to people like what is your artwork? I want to receive this, And so it's just this really deep appreciation that I love. And is something that I think, I know I've tried to express, and I've had other friends who are channels on the show have also expressed of like, we can't really receive this if we're orienting from like this is better than what I have to offer. And so when she's trying to encourage us like to share our codes, to share our joy, to share our mission, it's because like we all really are needed. And so I think just for me in that moment, I had this other layer of understanding, my knowing that Christina is needed just as much as the Oracle is needed, just as much as, anyone I like to channel. Like, we're all needed. And that's really important in receiving this information and working with different beings, and just for people to understand why, like, your creativity, the things that want to flow out of your mouth, the things that you feel passionate about talking about, saying, creating, whether that feels really like tangible and practical or more like artistry, it's all important, and no one else can do it like you can. Like, no one else can transmit it in that way. So after that portion, she asked me the same thing she asked everybody else at the end of the call. Well, a certain version of it. There are kind of two aspects to it, right? So she's talking about building her character, as she was kind of giving us homework for the rest of the year, building her character. And so literally she has me go back into the front of the mirror, and this is very like, honestly, you should do this. She has me go back to the front of the mirror, and they have me do this all the time. I just haven't like talked about it. I don't know why. And I'm looking at myself, and then I just see the vibrational overlay of the me that I like want to manifest, if that makes any sense. Like, there's like a vibrational overlay, and it's like I can see that hologram kind of outside of me, and so it's like everything about me looks like a little bit different. That was coming from the overall question of, 2024, how do you want to feel? Who do you want to be? And as I was just really clear on kind of like what that would look like in my reality, I just saw that vibrational overlay, and I looked in the mirror and like just slapped it onto my body and basically imprinted it in. And with that, there were the words that came up, and I started just saying the words out loud. And those words were freedom. I want freedom. I want slowness. I want support. I want to feel held. I said, I just want to be me. I said, I want ease, and I want simplicity. That was it. And as I was saying those words, and I'm kind of looking at this vibrational overlay on my body, I started seeing all of these things in that vibrational overlay like pop up or get removed, or like myself taking action, doing things. So immediately as I mean, classic, surprise, one of the first things was get rid of all of the extra shit. And I just think this is such an important message for everybody. And I know it's so simple, and I'm like, look, I am part of the problem too. Like, I've been getting this message to clean out all this stuff all the extras in my house for forever, and I just haven't done it. And I can make up the excuse that I don't have time, but I seem to have time for other things. So it's all in priorities, but she was just showing me like, hey, you want simplicity in your life, right? Okay. You want ease. So make everything simpler, less belongings. You don't need all of these belongings. You don't need all of these belongings, right? And she was just kind of showing me that when I start removing belongings, I started seeing my brain just start to clear out. And I started to see my body just start to process everything a lot more easily because it wasn't having to sort through all of the energies around me. And I'm just starting to connect, all these energies, these feelings I want to add into my life and the tangible actions that I can take. So and then she showed me, like, when I was talking about just being me and being supported, uh, I saw in that vibrational overlay myself saying to somebody that I care about, I really need help right now. And I was saying it in like a really emotional way. And I realized how often I ask for support in this very like not emotional way, if that makes sense. And I do that because I don't want people to feel like they're taking on my energy if I'm going through something. I will ask for support from this very like, I don't want to say, it's like a matter of fact, like, hey, I really need this right now. And she was showing me, again, I was being shown, all of us in this vibrational overlay was getting imprinted in my body. I'm just being shown what to do. Like asking that from a space, like really from my heart space. And like, this was connecting back to me the importance of my like vulnerability of actually people are going to receive your request for help differently when you're coming from an emotional place. And what I was being shown was like I started crying and I was like, I really need help. And the person really receiving it differently, like, oh, I get it. And when I saw that, I just noticed within myself, like, oh my God, I don't want to do that. I don't want to cry and ask somebody for help because I don't want someone to feel like they have to like deal with my stuff when I have the tools to deal with my stuff. And the oracle was bringing up to me, she's like, but that's she was like, I get it, but you're not doing it for someone to deal with your stuff. Like, you know how to deal with your stuff. This is actually effective communication. Like, the emotion behind it is communicating something differently. And that's so true. I feel like a lot of what's coming in general, like, I'm noticing themes when I take a step back, and one of the themes is obviously like communication. Crystal clear communication, and I'm realizing how much gets lost between people because we don't communicate clearly enough. And emotion is a really important part of that communication because like that's the telepathic part. Like when people are feeling emotions in a room, like how someone's feeling. But when we're doing all this communication from this kind of like emotionless place, people aren't really getting it. People don't really get like the importance or like why it matters, or it's not really clicking. It's not really clicking. And I'll just say, this is kind of a off topic, but I'm going to make separate content about just like business things because it seems to be very important. A lot of people, and I'm just going to tell you this, like all of my content is like inherently emotional. That's why people can hear what I'm saying. And if you feel like people aren't hearing you, if you feel like you're, putting out all this gold and no one's really hearing you, it's because you've taken like the emotional part out of it. You've taken like the vulnerability part out, the personality part out. And that's why a lot of people don't hear you. It's like gotten stale, right? And so I don't really have that problem with my business, but I recognize that I have that problem with my personal relationships, like with personal support. With personal support of what I'm asking for support in my personal life, like letting myself crack a little bit so people can see like, oh, and that was reflected to me this week too, in an important way. Like when someone said to me that everybody sees me as so strong, it just seems like, oh, you're good, and that you're good. And so that's why I can feel like sometimes in my personal life when I'm asking for help, like no one's really hearing me because the energy I'm giving off is like, I'm strong, I've got it, I'm good. And she was basically pointing out to me, like, when I really let myself, like open my heart, and like maybe that is like letting people see me cry, people are gonna be like, oh, whoa, okay, I hear you now. And that was a really important piece. So I'm seeing these different things. Um, even like changing my exercise routine, um, and she was kind of connecting to me. I've been this week. What I did was I actually just I had made a list last week of all my favorite foods as a kid and everything I ate, and I am just only eating those foods this week. Like I'm doing a full inner child food week, and it has been giving me all my inner child codes. I mean, she told us to do this, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it, and it has been so freaking good for me. Like I feel like it has turned on this whole other piece of me. I feel like it's activated aspects of my channel that were not coming in before. Highly recommend. Highly, highly, highly recommend. And what else? So I'm going back to these words. Freedom. Freedom. Isn't that what we all want? And what I realized was for me to feel free, I need simplicity. I need less. I need ease, right? And so she was basically just imprinting those words into me and reminding me, hey, this is why it's so important. When you get really clear on these words, and I have them written down, you look at every single thing in your reality and you ask yourself, what's not in alignment with this, right? So if I look at freedom and I'm like, I'm looking at everything in my life where I'm like, where do I not feel free? Are my daily routines feeling like they're constricting me? Do I not feel, and one of the big things for me, just gonna be totally honest, like where I don't feel free is when I'm having to like either answer everybody else's to-dos or answer everybody else's messages. And what you have to understand is like, I mean, I get a lot more messages than I would say the average person. I know people that get a lot more messages than me, but you know, if I were to reply to all of these, this would take me more than 24 hours of the day. There's just a lot of 3D messages coming in all the time, and that is one area that is very clear to me. I don't feel free. And so that's where, I have a lot of boundaries with that, and I'm like, it's very crystal clear. I need even bigger boundaries with that so that I feel free. um and I started to realize like anything that I feel like I have to do, I don't feel free. A lot of that stuff I actually would like to do. And the second I tell myself I don't have to do it, then it becomes a choice and now I feel free in it, right? So freedom, that's a big thing. And I'm looking at, is there anywhere that I don't feel free? And then I'm looking at ease and I'm like, is there anything that's feeling like it's not easy? And any little place where it's not feeling like ease or flow, like I just got to get rid of it, right? So she's walking me through what she was telling people to do on the Oracle call tonight, and I think for me, writing those words down, I was really getting clear on in 2024, like this version of me, what are the words? And I'm using that to filter my reality and look at all of it. And I started just writing down really clear action steps to align myself with those words, which is, hey, next weekend we're cleaning out my closet. These are the new phone boundaries. This is how I'm going to change my exercise routine. With business, this is exactly what I'm going to do. Clear as day, right? I think the emotional part of me is more important. So I wrote down some things, basically committing to myself to have a space every single day where I verbally communicate my emotions in a way that's coming from my heart space, not coming from a mental intellectual space, because those are two different things. That was a very tangible action step for me. So starting to write those things down, and then as this kind of closed out, I she so I'm like seeing all of this, I'm starting to write down all these to-dos, and then this vibrational overlay gets imprinted into my body. And I'm getting really clear. And then she brought me into, like, walked out of the room, and I walked by Luna, and I will let you know this Luna Loki integration has not gone so well. And Luna, I just started talking to Luna, and simply, very simply, what she told me warmed my heart. Luna's my cat, in case I didn't talk about that. I just had a conversation with her. And she was basically just saying from an emotional space, my cat. This is obviously a telepathic conversation. Um, but it was like that moment of, like, getting on someone's level, really, and like talking eye to eye, and feeling them. And I had asked her already psychically multiple times, like, how can we get you to integrate with Loki, the new kitten? Because she just is hissing and growling and all that stuff. And it wasn't really clicking. And in this conversation I had with her, I was suddenly on the receiving end of, like, Luna is emotionally expressing to me, and this is telepathically, but this is also, like, very visually through her body language. She's purring. She's getting Luna is not, like, super cuddly, and she is all over me and, like, rubbing me and, like, just rubbing up against me and looking at me in a way that she's never looked at me before. And she was like, and I know when I picked her up from the place I got her, she was around a lot of other cats, and she was just kind of, like, lost in the shuffle. And she wasn't getting, like, enough food because all the other cats would eat the food. It's just, like, getting lost in the shuffle. And she had a lot of, like, kind of trauma there, and, like, around all the other cats, and was very sensitive. And she comes into my home, and she at first was very nervous around me, and then, we bonded, and she became, I say, queen of the castle, as she is. But what happened was, suddenly, like, she was safe. She was safe where somebody was fully focused on her and attending to her, and she could be free and she could be herself. And it was us. It was just us. And she loved that it was us, and that I loved her and she loved me, and we had each other, and we had our thing going. And the thing is that it took her, like, a year to probably, like, really integrate with Andrew. And I still notice there's some resistance. And so we talked about it tonight. Like, it was all happening in this moment where she's, like, in her feels, Luna. And I have never experienced her in her feels like this. Like, she's usually, like, snooty, isn't like this. And emotionally was like, with Andrew, I felt like, are we going to lose us? Like, am I going to be less important to you? And then she goes, and with this new cat, it's like, now you're further away from me. Like, it literally makes me emotional to talk about. She's like, am I going to be less important to you? And I just had to have that moment of, like, no, Luna, like, it's always going to be us. And there's more than enough love to go around, and we're adding to our family. And our family and more people being here is really just a function of how much I love you, because Andrew also, he takes care of Luna. He takes care of Luna, and we, got Loki for a number of reasons, but including she really needed a playmate, and I was talking about that, and because we're having, like, this emotional connection, it was like her energy got it. Like, she got it. She was like, oh, okay, right? As long as, like, I'm clear that it's still going to be us. And her energy completely changed. And so I'm suddenly, like, on the receiving end immediately, right? Of what the Oracle was just telling me was so important about my delivery. And how people might be missing me. Where, like, I was missing Luna in my conversations with her, trying to figure out this Loki-Luna integration. Because I needed to have that conversation where I was feeling her emotions around it. Of, like, oh my gosh, Luna. Like, no. You're not losing me. You're not any less important to me. You're still the queen of my castle, Luna, right? And it clicked. Like, we actually really communicated. We met each other there. And so then I immediately after that and told to go into the room with Loki. And I sit down with Loki, and Loki is on one. Loki has so much energy, and, you know, teaching me a lot as usual. But I'm just watching as he is zooming around like he's like a kid that just had so much candy. I mean, this kitten, he's so small and he's so fast and he's zooming around. He's like, he like leaps. He leaps places. It's wild. It's crazy. And I was like, I'm really tired, and I knew he wanted to play, and I felt guilty, and I was like, I should play with him. Like, he hasn't gotten playtime today, and I was like, I am literally so tired though. I like don't have time. I don't have energy to play. Like, you know, because you got to like pick up the toy and whatever. Even just, you know, shooting the laser around the ground was feeling tiring to me. I was like, that just seems like effort. I just need to lay here. Like, I just need to lay here. And so I just lay down on the ground. And this kitten starts just making a toy of my body. Of my clothes, really. And this is what he does. And I'm just like laughing. I just start laughing. I'm watching him zooming around the room, and then, you know, his pupils are getting huge and his butt's shaking, and he's because he's gonna pounce, and he's pouncing on my sweatpants, like, and on the hood of my sweatshirt, and he's just like pouncing all over me. And I'm witnessing as I'm simply laying there doing nothing. Exactly what I wanted to do. And this cat and he's purring. He purrs so loud. It's so cute. He purrs so loud, and he's zooming around. He's having the time of his life. He's like rolling around, rolling over, doing somersaults on my stomach as I lay there. And, you know, he's full on playing and having the time of his life. And I'm like, wow. First of all, look at this kitten. All he needs, all we need is us to have a good time. He actually doesn't even need a toy. He doesn't need a laser. He doesn't need a cat mouse. Like, and here I am, I'm sitting here thinking he needs a new toy, he needs something else to entertain him. And I'm like, wow, like, I don't have to do anything. And he is, first of all, he's got everything he needs. He's got everything he needs to have a good time, to figure it out. Right. And the second piece is he's just having the time of his life. And all he really wanted was me there. Like, all he really wanted was me there. And I just had to lay there, and we were playing, and I wasn't doing anything. And that moment, like, here's the thing. When I'm with the Oracle, it's like every single thing I do hits different. Like, I'm so present and aware, and I'm seeing the deeper message in every little thing I'm doing. And sometimes I think that's an exhausting way to live my whole life, but it's always there. Sometimes it's a very fun way to live your life. And I just, you know, that was a way that she's just kind of taking me through these little things in my house that seem so simple. I'm seeing them from a completely different lens, and I'm realizing, oh my God, like, these deep spiritual lessons from watching this kitten play. Of like, we like thinking we need all this extra stuff, and we don't. We actually don't need any extra things. Like, everything we have is within us. I don't need a toy to play, right? And I think there's a lot of times when we talk about taking action, it's like we come up with ideas in our head that we need this or that or this or that to get started, to get going, to move to our next phase. And do we really? Like, do we really? Most of the time I find in my life I don't. I just need to get creative. I need to get creative with what's right in front of me and actually utilize what's right in front of me. As I'm watching this kitten turn my sweatpants into like an entire toy, and he's using my sweatpants and my sweatshirt as a toy in like 12 different ways. And I didn't even know that was possible. So I'm realizing, okay, how can I make better use of all the resources right in front of me? Right in front of me. And I'm realizing, wow, I can give to somebody by just laying here and being me. Because all he really just wanted was someone in there with him. And I feel like, well, I know, you know, and that was kind of how she wrapped up with me tonight. She was saying, like, reminding me how important it is in my life to share my experiences the same way it is very important for everyone else to share their experiences. And she was asking me, she's like, what are your favorite conversations to have? And I'm like, when I'm hearing about people's lives. Um, and I know that there can be this like deep craving for knowledge and more and cool shit. And I have that part of me for sure that I care about a lot. And I also know, like, when it comes to real, like, personal transformation and creating the lives we want, all of the actual codes are in our personal shares. It's not in all the cool stuff that we find or that we're, channeling and remembering about Atlantis. Like, that's all fun and cool, but I think like it was just for me coming back to, okay, but for the real like personal life transformation work, and all of it's valuable, right? Like that for me, the codes always come back to uh emotional expression, receiving people emotionally, me going deeper into my emotions, creativity, and some version of storytelling, which is all creativity, right? Like artwork, dance, movies, film, songs, like that's all storytelling. And it comes back to what she's been talking about, us all having the puzzle pieces for each other, and the codes for each other. And it suddenly like really clicked for me. It really clicked for me that a lot of the codes that I have to share, and even for myself, come from me just sharing my experiences and my feelings. And that was when she was immediately like, okay, now you're going to do this podcast from Christina, not us, because everything I just shared for the last hour, me just talking about what happened between me and the Oracle and some of my personal reflections, I guarantee had some codes for you, and probably made some things click for you in different ways. So that leads me right here to this moment of me podcasting about what happened tonight in the middle of the Oracle blend, which is a very cool place to be. So let me know if you are also curious about like this in-between space. That's like the kind of stuff I like to ask channels. I think it's really interesting. Obviously, the mechanics, the coming in and out, their relationship with the beings. And I love talking about it, So as I am deepening my work with the Oracle, I am also really deepening my relationship with myself and coming to such like an even deeper appreciation for the Christina codes. And seeing that in everybody around me too, which is a really, really powerful place to be. It feels really good. So I am integrating everything. I mean, that was just what happened in the last few hours. Last week there's been so much moving and shaking. I'll have to get back to separately. But I am going to, after this, keep writing down action steps for myself, specifically about the streams I can open for myself to more clearly express my emotions. And again, not from a mental reflective way, but from I'm in the experience way for myself, and start to open up those channels, because that's the exact directive that I've gotten. And I'm also going to write down every bit of my house that I need to clean out, and I'm going to put it on my calendar of when I'm doing that. And so that's what we're talking about grounding it in. Those are two like really surface level examples, but you get what I'm saying. And that is the difference between creating a different reality next year and not. So I would really encourage you, if you have not watched the Oracle call from December 13th, to rewatch that one. I think there's a lot of really good stuff in there for us moving into this next year. I'm super excited for 2024. And I will record a podcast like kind of going deeper into 2024, but I would just really encourage you to reflect on the frequencies that you want to embody next year. So again, for me, it was the freedom, ease, simplicity, just being me and being held. That was like the energy that I realized I just really want to be in next year. And then all of the action steps started coming into place, and then I'm writing those down and actually putting a plan in place for me to do those things. So reflect on the energies that you want to activate so that you can do that. And maybe some of the practices that came up for me tonight, whether it is your mirror work or dance light language or doing your hologram vibrational overlay onto your body while you're looking in the mirror, any of that, any of that fun stuff. Maybe that inspires you. So let me know how this lands for you and what comes up for you. Grateful for you all as always. I am going to go eat a big pizza, and when I do that, she'll be gone totally, and I'll be in full Christina mode with my pizza. So wish me luck on my pizza endeavor. Share this episode if you enjoyed it. I always appreciate that. I would love to keep growing our community. It's a beautiful space to be. Thank you for co-creating it with me, because it's y'all that make it. So appreciate all of you. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, night, whatever time it is, wherever you are. And I will chat with you again in the next episode.